Psychopolitics, the invisible war for your mind. Imagine for a moment that every decision you make, every purchase you complete, every vote you cast, every like you give on social media, isn't really yours. That there exists an invisible, sophisticated, and silent machinery that has learned to read your mind better than you do yourself, and that every day subtly guides you toward behaviors that benefit others, not you. This isn't science fiction. This is the reality we live in today, and it has a name: psychopolitics. The dawn of a new era of control. Just a few decades ago, political control was exercised brutally and obviously. Authoritarian regimes used force, direct censorship, palpable fear. It was easy to identify the enemy because they came with uniforms, tanks, and sirens. But something changed fundamentally in the last 2 decades. Power learned something revolutionary. It's much more effective to seduce than to repress, to conquer than to dominate, to make people desire their own slavery. Byung-Chul Han, the philosopher who has best deciphered this code, warns us that we have entered the era of smart power. A power that no longer says you cannot, but yes you can. A power that doesn't oppose your freedom, but masterfully exploits it. Think about it for a second. How many times a day do you check your phone? Do you feel that little anxiety when you don't have internet connection? That almost physical need to check notifications? That's not coincidence. It's the result of years of psychological engineering designed specifically to capture and monetize your attention. The burnout society. When you become your own boss and your own slave. Han describes a fascinating and disturbing phenomenon: the transition from disciplinary society to performance society. In the past, we had bosses who watched us, strict schedules, clear rules. Today, we are our own bosses, we work from home, we have flexibility. Sounds liberating, right? But here's the brilliant trick. Now we exploit ourselves 24 hours a day. The entrepreneur who works until 3 in the morning doesn't see a boss exploiting them. They see their passion. The person who checks emails on vacation doesn't feel external imposition. They feel responsibility. The influencer who documents every moment of their life doesn't perceive surveillance. They experience authenticity. The result is a massively exhausted, burned-out society, where burnout has become an epidemic, but nobody can complain because technically we are free. It's perfect exploitation, voluntary, invisible, and apparently chosen by ourselves. Big data. The digital oracle that predicts your future. While we lived this mirage of freedom, something extraordinary was happening in the digital shadows. Every click, every pause while you read, every movement of your mouse, every second you spend looking at a photo on Instagram, was being recorded, analyzed, and processed by increasingly sophisticated algorithms. Shoshana Zuboff called it surveillance capitalism, but it's much more than that. It's the construction of the most powerful human behavior prediction system in history. Google doesn't just know what you search for. It knows what you're going to search for before you know it. Facebook doesn't just know your friends. It can predict who your next partner will be with greater accuracy than you yourself. But here comes the truly chilling part. Once they can predict your behavior, the logical next step is to modify it. And that's exactly what they're doing. The invisible architecture of your reality. Every time you open a social network, you enter a space carefully designed to influence your mental state. The colors, loading speed, frequency of notifications, the order in which posts appear, even the number of likes they show. Everything is calculated to the millimeter to generate specific responses in your brain. It's as if you lived in a house where the walls, without you realizing it, moved subtly to guide you toward certain rooms. You think you're exploring freely, but you're actually following a predetermined path by invisible architects. Algorithms have learned that outrage generates more engagement than happiness. That's why your feed progressively fills with content that bothers you, irritates you, alarms you. It's not that the world has become more terrible. It's that the machine has discovered that negativity keeps you glued to the screen longer. Cambridge Analytica. When the experiment escaped the laboratory. In 2018, the world abruptly awakened when it was revealed that Cambridge Analytica had used data from 87 million Facebook users to influence elections across the planet. But what was truly shocking wasn't the numbers, but the methodology. They had managed to create massive psychological profiles. They knew exactly what type of message would persuade each person according to their personality. If you were an anxious person, you received content that amplified your fears. If you were competitive, they showed you how your candidate was winning. If you valued tradition, they bombarded you with narratives about the loss of ancient values. The terrifying thing is that Cambridge Analytica was just the tip of the iceberg. It was a relatively small company using techniques that big tech had been perfecting for years. The difference is that they were discovered. The factory of desires. How your longings are manufactured. One of the most disturbing aspects of psychopolitics is its ability to create artificial desires that we feel as authentic. It's not just about selling you products you need. It's about making you need products you didn't even know existed before. The process is subtle but devastatingly effective. First, algorithms identify small dissatisfactions in your life by analyzing your digital behavior. Then they gradually expose you to content that amplifies those dissatisfactions. Finally, they present you with the solution in the form of a product, service, experience, or ideology. It's as if there were an army of psychologists working 24 hours to identify exactly what would make you feel incomplete, and then design the perfect illusion of completeness. The world's largest human laboratory. Social networks are not communication platforms. They are massive psychological experimentation laboratories where each user is, simultaneously, test subject and product. Facebook has publicly admitted to manipulating users' feeds to study how content changes affected their emotional states. They've conducted experiments to see if they could induce depression, euphoria, aggression, or conformity simply by modifying what people see on their screens. Imagine that every day, Without knowing it, you participate in hundreds of micro-experiments designed to test your psychological resistance, your emotional breaking points, your behavioral triggers. The results of these experiments aren't published in scientific journals. They're used to optimize your manipulation. Democracy under digital siege. Perhaps the most alarming aspect of psychopolitics is its impact on democratic processes. Democracy is based on the premise that informed and rational citizens can make sensible collective decisions. But what happens when that rationality is constantly being sabotaged by algorithms designed to exploit our cognitive biases? Today we live in personalized information bubbles. Two people can live in the same city and have completely different versions of reality, each reinforced by algorithms that show them exactly what they want to hear. It's not natural polarization, it's algorithmic polarization, designed because divided societies are easier to manipulate and more profitable for platforms. The resistance. Reclaiming our minds. But this story doesn't end in dystopia. Every day more people awaken to this reality and develop resistance strategies. Resistance begins with recognition. Understanding that we are in the middle of a psychological war, where our minds are the disputed territory. Digital hygiene becomes as important as physical hygiene. This means time limits on devices, diversification of information sources, use of tools that block tracking, and something fundamental: the deliberate practice of boredom and contemplation. Because it turns out that a bored mind is a free mind. It's in spaces without stimulation where we recover our capacity to think autonomously, to generate our own ideas, to reconnect with our authentic desires versus the manufactured ones. Liberating technology versus oppressive technology. Not all technology is inherently oppressive. There are growing movements toward ethical technologies, free software, decentralized networks that return control to users. The fundamental difference lies in who controls the technology and for what purpose it's designed. Liberating technology is transparent about how it works, gives real control to the user over their data, doesn't manipulate behaviors for third-party benefit, and is designed to amplify human capacity, not exploit it. The future of the human mind. We are at a crucial moment in human history. The coming years will determine whether we develop technologies that help us be more human, or whether we allow technology to redesign us to be more machine-like. Artificial intelligence is evolving toward systems that can maintain conversations indistinguishable from human ones, generate personalized content in real time, and soon, access our neurological processes directly through brain-computer interfaces. The question isn't whether this technology will be developed, but who will control it and for what purpose. Will it be used to expand our cognitive capacities and our freedom, or to perfect our manipulation? The call to consciousness. We live in an era where the most important freedom we can exercise is the freedom of attention. Consciously deciding what we pay attention to, what we allow to enter our minds, what information sources we consider trustworthy. Psychopolitics works because it operates below the threshold of our consciousness. But once we understand its mechanisms, once we see the matrix, so to speak, we regain the power of choice. It's not about rejecting all technology or living as digital hermits. It's about developing a mature, conscious, and intentional relationship with the most powerful tools humanity has ever created. The final battle. In the end, psychopolitics represents the most important battle of our time. The struggle to preserve what makes us human in an era of increasingly intelligent machines. It's the war between authenticity and manipulation, between autonomy and algorithmization, between human dignity and optimization for corporate benefit. Every time you decide to check your phone or resist the urge, every time you actively seek perspectives that challenge your beliefs, every time you prioritize a face-to-face conversation over a digital interaction, you're fighting this battle. Psychopolitics is not inevitable. It's a collective choice. And as long as we have consciousness of its existence, as long as we keep alive our capacity for wonder, reflection, and resistance, humanity has the opportunity to write a future where technology serves people, not the other way around. The final question isn't whether we can win this war, but whether we'll have the courage to recognize that we're in it, and the wisdom to fight for our own mind with the same intensity that others fight to control it.